What we do know is this, Simon. It's my understanding that in the stand at Newcastle tonight, in the director's box, will be one Graham Jones. Having made the trip from the South Coast, good coach. Yep. We like him. We've spoken to him in the past, but not on this occasion. But we know now that it's finished with him down at Bournemouth. He's on his way there. Steve Bruce wants him in there as an assistant. The deal apparently is now verbally agreed. Yep. It will be signed later on, and Graham Jones will align himself to Steve Bruce later on tonight. But he'll watch the match against Leeds United from the director's box. But having said all that, Simon, at the weekend there, after their defeat at Aston Villa, banners outside St James's Park on Saturday night. And now what do we hear? The written media banned from this week's news conference. How wise a decision is that, and why did they make it? In fact, who made it? Let's get more on this. The Daily Mail football correspondent in the North East is Craig Hope. We like Craig. We speak to him a lot. Craig, good morning to you.
Morning, Jim. But I never speak to you about victories or anything cheerful, do I?
I know, mate. Well, if Newcastle start winning, then you'll be able to come on and talk, about more favourable subject matter. But Craig, tell me, this has depressed you enormously, hasn't it? This media ban, this written media ban. How did it come about? When did you find out?
Listen, you've only got to look at the reaction, Jim, the subsequent reaction of supporters and the majority of newspapers to realise that it is a self-defeating exercise. We first got wind on Sunday that there would be no embargoed section for the written press, which, I don't agree with that. But if we were still allowed to ask our own questions in an open forum, then that would have been okay to a degree, as long as we've got our voice. Because after all, are we not? We are there as the eyes, ears, and the voice of the public, and we should be able to hold these people to account and ask questions and explore subjects such as the Graham Jones issue you touched upon there. But then we entered into yesterday's press conference, and the rights holders asked their questions, and then very abruptly the call was shut off, and written journalists were not allowed to ask any questions of Steve Bruce at all. Now, the clubs say the motivation is because of recent coverage, and I disagree with that. I think recent coverage has been fair, certainly in light of what they've done on the pitch. You cannot defend that. You've only got to watch them. You've only got to look at the run in which they're on at the moment and the performances which go with it. You cannot take umbrage with the criticism of that. Steve Bruce appears to, and that is the reason for the press ban. But listen, I honestly think the true motivation, and only the club can answer this, is more that we've got ourselves in a bit of a horrible cycle here, a vicious circle, Jim, whereby we have our time with Steve, and he says something which is really self-defeating. It's self-inflicted. He antagonises supporters with a lot of what he says. He made comments last week about Rafa Benitez, which were just so hopelessly misjudged. He called the players absolute, expletive the week before. And this makes back-page headlines. And what we're doing is we're simply reporting what Steve has said, okay? But it's this horrible circle where I honestly think the decision by the club, okay, Steve might not be happy with some of the criticism. In part, I think the motivation is to save Steve from himself in many ways, because he's become a little bit of a liability in front of the microphone.
Yeah. And to my mind, I mean, Simon, you're looking quizzically at your microphone. I know from the past you banned the written media when you were at Palace. Yep. But I have to say, and you're not going to be surprised at this, I'm with Craig. Craig Hope and others up there are good journalists and good operators. You get your information anyway. So what's the point of a ban? Yeah, I mean, I banned print journalists because when they were writing stories about my football club, they were superimposing their personal opinions upon me, and I wasn't privy to press conferences like football managers are. So I didn't get a right to reply to some of the drivel that was written and had no relevance to the substance of the football team, besides personal swipes at me because individual journalists had their agendas. That was my motivation behind it. I don't agree with Steve's principle that he should ban these journalists, because I don't think it's a helpful exercise. I think some of the rubbish that's written needs to be held to account, and I think the best way to do that is to front these people up. I'm interested to hear from Craig as to why he thinks that one of the things that you have with the radio and the television is an inability for the media to distort your words or to take away the nuancing of what you're saying. And that might be some of the reasons why Brucey doesn't want to talk to the written press, because the written press can take the pen and do what they want with it, whereas if you broadcast live on Sky or on a radio, what you say is what gets heard. But I'm interested to hear, Craig, because you and I have had this debate before on other shows about media's attitude towards Newcastle and so on and so forth, and Bruce.
But why would he pick? Why would they pick simply the written press?
Well, Steve's opinion is that the written press have been more critical, have been unfair with him as opposed to... Listen, the thing is with broadcast, as you quite rightly say there, Simon, what you say on broadcast, it goes in and it goes out. Written press, we've got a little bit more scope for analysis and colour, and we go away and get stories as well. And
opinion.
We break news and there's more scope for opinion, absolutely. So the argument and the fallout is invariably with written press. That has always been the case. It will always be the case too as well. But, it's the argument you're making there that, because the written press have got the license and the scope to go away and do that you ban them because of that, then why...
No, I didn't make that argument. I made the exact opposite argument. What I asked you was, is there a reason why you think Bruce has done this, and are there specific examples? I wouldn't do it because I'd want to have the audience with you guys. I'd want to put you firmly, squarely and explicitly in your place if you were writing things that I felt were unfair, unjust and personal. I'd do the exact opposite. So my point is what have they doubled down on that they're resisting and resenting that the written press are doing?
And incidentally, people like Craig and I would fight back at you if you did that.
That's fine. That's fine. Big boys. Bruce is a big boy.
I agree. The point I've made to the club is Steve Bruce should be used. The club have asked me the question, what is the point of Steve entering into this separate section with the written newspaper?
Yep.
Well, I'm saying, use it to your advantage. Either A, as you quite rightly say, Simon, use it to challenge us and to go back at us, or B, use it to be clever about it the way other managers have been. I mean, the last manager in this patch, Rafa Benitez, used that time with journalists to his advantage to get his message out there. He used it to build relationships, and you saw the positives from that. Steve so far hasn't been able to do that. For whatever reason, all of these incendiary quotes which you see on the back page of the newspapers and which antagonise and wind up supporters all seem to emerge from our section of the press conferences. So to that degree, I can almost understand why the club have removed it to save Steve from himself. My message to them would be, get your heads together and come up with a better strategy to build relationships and use that time to your advantage.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I agree with that.
I agree
Totally.
with you. I agree with you. I mean, I think that I would ask you, Craig, though, and this is not me defending Steve because I query his reasons for wanting to be there now, because ultimately I think he's got a poor group of players. I think that ship has sailed now. I think he's got an owner that simply whoever he employs, unless they go against that owner like Rafa Benitez did and caught publicity and support as a result of it, will always be the object of vitriol. But do you think when he walked through the door that you guys or anybody gave him a fair crack at the whip?
Yeah, I do. Listen, I'm going to take you up on something you said there because I disagree. Because this narrative is emerging now that he's got a poor group of players and that are...
Oh, they're rubbish, Craig.
No, they're not. No, they're not. Those players are far more capable of what they're achieving in the Steve Bruce at the moment. It really is. So people in the media who defend Steve Bruce, and there's been a lot of defence of Steve Bruce. Last season, they used results to defend Steve Bruce because you know what, you could, because results weren't that bad, and every time, and it was to Steve Bruce's credit, every time you really needed something and there were bad runs, the players pulled something out the hat for him. And at the end of the season, I give him credit for that because they survived with a degree of comfort. Jim, I've been on your show so many times. The word I always used was it was unsustainable. It really was.
Yeah.
The way they were playing, every number attached to that team last season, you could not sustain it. Most shots on their own target, fewest amount of shots, every number. We don't want to go through them again.
Sure.
Now all that is gone. Performances have always been the same, but now results have also gone, and results have started to suffer. Steve Bruce's defenders, supporters, backers, friends, whatever you want to call them, they're now using the argument, these players aren't good enough, he's got a bad owner. I'm sorry, no, that's wrong. I'm not buying that. In the isolation of the group he's got, Callum Wilson is a centre forward, Martin Dubravka, there are good players there. Trust me, Simon, there really are.
And there's some bloody rubbish there as well, Craig. And I think when somebody doesn't agree with something, and nothing in this world is binary, everything is nuanced. And people make this case that because somebody advances a different discussion, it doesn't fit the narrative of either Newcastle fans or Newcastle journalists, that somehow they're defenders of Steve Bruce. I think some of the work that Steve's done up at Newcastle has been poor. I think the results against Sheffield United and against Brentford were scandalous and down to Steve Bruce. But that doesn't get reported. And everybody knows that Mike Ashley is universally loathed by Newcastle fans. So whoever he appoints will have a tarnish, and that is a fact, except Benitez, who sat there and defended Newcastle fans against him.
What we do know is this, Simon and Craig, we're out of time because we're heading to the 11 o'clock bulletin. Craig, you'll be there tonight working in your capacity with the Mail, right?
Yeah, and we'll see what comes after it. So listen, I hope they win because... Do you know what? If they get beat tonight, it's almost even gone beyond criticising Steve Bruce. This is a horrible, toxic situation we're in. And if there's another defeat tonight, I think the club need to look at it. It's not nice at all for anybody at the moment.
Okay, Craig, listen, thanks for your time. Craig Hope, the Northern correspondent for the Daily Mail, North East correspondent, who will be at the match tonight, even though there was a ban on the written media. I remember at Scottish TV years ago, Simon, there was the Scottish League Cup final. Celtic against Rangers. Scottish TV was banned. We were banned by Celtic, banned by Rangers. It's goodbye from me, and we went out to Cliff Richard. It's so funny we don't talk anymore. That's how you deal with a ban. Simon, I've been asked by a bunch of Newcastle fans, get your take on this. What does this tell you at the moment? That Graham Jones, someone you and I know well, he's been on this show umpteen times, when he was assistant to Martinez at Wigan and then Everton and the Belgian national squad. Remember, he spoke to us regularly when he was at the World Cup in Russia. And thereafter has managed Luton Town, and now leaving his post in Bournemouth and heading up North East. Tonight he'll watch the game and he'll become another assistant manager to Steve Bruce. At this time in the season, what message does that send about where Newcastle are?
I think it sends a message that they need a different voice in the dressing room. They need a different set of thoughts, a different set of eyes, maybe some different coaching, maybe some work with the offensive players to get them to be more productive than they currently are, and to try and fix the problem. The problem for me is done. I think Brucey's done there. I think it's a matter of time. I don't know whether Mike Ashley's doubling down because he won't be told what to do by Newcastle fans, but I think Brucey, his time at Newcastle has run its course, not because I want it to, and not because I'm in the camp of wanting it to be the other way. I really couldn't care less about Newcastle, full stop. You know, I think they get precisely what they deserve at times. And if you want to see decline, Newcastle fans want to see decline, go look at Sunderland. Go look at what an owner does. Mike Ashley's done a lot of things wrong at that football club, and I think he was stupid to have bought it in the first place. And I told him so at the time, and I think the idea of buying it was a bet between him and Paul Kemsley, the ex-vice chairman at Spurs, that he wouldn't do it.
What did he say to you when you told Ashley at the time you were wrong to buy the club?
Mike was in a different state of mind at the time. He didn't realise what the landscape of football can be like. You want to see decline, go look at Sheffield Wednesday. Go look at Nottingham Forest. Go look at Leeds out of the Premier League for 17 years. Go look at Sunderland, Ellis Short. There's an owner that doesn't give a monkeys about your football club and doesn't bankroll it and doesn't do the things right. That's real decline. I don't defend Mike Ashley because I'm a particular Mike Ashley acolyte, but there are a lot of other football clubs that would look at Newcastle United that are bigger than Newcastle United, by the way, that have had 17 years in a wilderness, like Leeds United, and go, well, you know what? There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't be complaining. That environment is toxic. Yeah. It's toxic. And Craig says, and I like Craig, we've done shows together and we agree to disagree. Yeah. Craig says that, you know, he hates toxicity, but they are in part stoking some of that. I think it's stupid to ban the written media. I think it opens up another challenge and another opportunity for people to take a swipe at you. I think you should front them out.
Totally. The last thing you do is ban them.
But I think now for Steve, there is a very... I do believe that group of players isn't good enough. I do believe that they are a poor group of players. I do believe that Ryan Fraser is one of those players that when you've got adversity, you wouldn't want in your camp. I do believe that Andy Carroll should be taken out the back and done something different with them, played on the football pitch. I do look at some of these players like Joe Linton and think, my God, what have you got there? I do look at John Joe Shelby and think, you've got no legs. You can't... look at the things that you contribute on the pitch. You add no value. I do look at some of their defending and look at some of the performances against teams and say, but who's responsible for that in the end? It has to be the manager. And Brucey is now in a situation where, well, what's the point? Tony Cascarino said it the other day, what's the point? He's never going to turn this around.
Let me just tell you something.
As much as I'd like him, I like the bloke, but I'm not just going to sit there and give him a pass because I like him.
No, of course not. And I couldn't agree with you more on that. But on a ban, Simon, either of the broadcast media or the written media, it's pointless. And I'll tell you why. It's utterly pointless. Totally pointless. Because we do our jobs anyway.
Totally pointless. It will fuel a different narrative. I'd rather have them in the room and have my say at them and put them back on their heels
and
ask them to be accountable for their outcomes, ask them to be accountable for what they write, than have them be able to sit there and go...
They're accountable for what they write.
Well, they are...
Because they stand up for what they write.
They stand by what they write, but as Craig will have said, there is an element of opinion that's laced in written journalism that doesn't land in the broadcast journalism that we sit today. Bruce comes on here, anyone comes on here, I ask him a question.
If it's live.
If it's live, right. What he says is what we hear. It doesn't get taken away, clipped, cropped or edited and put out in a nuanced and an unnuanced format. I do this regularly. I sit here with social media clips that these boys do and watch the nuancing of what I've said completely taken out of it and go, well, I didn't quite say that. That wasn't what I meant.
Yeah, but how would you feel if Newcastle phoned you now and said, we heard your comments on talkSPORT about Shelby, Carroll and somebody else, Ryan Fraser. Not too happy about it, Simon. We might ban you. How would you feel?
I wouldn't really care either which way. Ban me from what?
There you go. It achieves Nothing.
No. I mean, we're in the same camp, Jim. We're not disagreeing. I think that I think it's weak to ban somebody.
Of course.
If you've got the ability, I didn't have the ability to respond to the written press that were writing crap about me that I wasn't even part of. I wasn't doing weekly press conferences with the Evening Standard.
You didn't have Twitter and things like that you could have fired back.
So but I would never have banned them via a weekly press conference. I'd want them there. I'd want to say to them, why have you written this? What have you written that for? How dare you write this? I'd want people to see me on the front foot pushing back.
Good.
And saying to you,
I like that. I like that, and you can see now. Look at the messages coming in. Mark, Newcastle fan, well done, Craig Hope. On with Jim and Simon. You summed up how the vast majority of supporters feel about the current situation.
And they're entitled to feel that way.
There's RJ. Well done. What a great interview this morning on talkSPORT with Jim Simon and Craig Hope. Well said, Craig Hope. Finally, somebody says what they think. I mean, you know, fair enough. Fair enough.